I'm Heidi from StoneGnome.com. I hope you will join me for a little cowl and make an infinity scarf with me. The scarf is very lace-like and drapey, and it has these stitch patterns that look like cables. And the back actually looks pretty good as well. On the top and at the bottom there is something that looks a little bit like an I-cord. The stitch patterns that I use in the scarf is based on the waistcoat stitch. And in Danish we call it the crocheted knit stitch because it looks like a knitted stitch. In English it's also called a split single crochet stitch or a center single crochet stitch. It can be difficult to work with. All these techniques I have used here I'm also using in some of my patterns, and I can see some of my testers get confused about this. And it doesn't really matter if they are experienced crocheters or they are newbies. So I thought I could use this scarf to introduce some of these techniques to more people. I made this scarf in a large version. It's 30 centimeter wide and 180 in circumference. You can make any size that you want. It doesn't have to be this large, but this one can be wrapped loosely twice around your shoulders or tied 3 times, or you can fold it and wear it as a shoulder warmer. But of course you can choose what size you want. It's up to you. I used a hook size 5mm, and that is relatively large. I would use that even if the yarn asks for 2.5 or 3.5mm. Maybe you will need another hook size, and that's why we need to make a sample to figure out what works for you. But first I would like to say some more about the hook. Hooks are very different. Here I have hooks of the same size. It's 8mm, but as you can see the heads are very different in size. When I do waistcoat stitches I would prefer small heads because I need to insert the hook into the stitch. Next thing to think about is how the head is shaped. I got 2 good hooks here. These are 6mm. As you can see they have very different shaped heads here. The wooden one is Symphony Knit Pro and I like it very much. It's a good hook. I'm not sure all these hooks look like this, so check it before you buy something. But it has a sharp pointed head, and it also have a sharp lip or nose, which I prefer to use to hook into other stitches. And then when you think you have found the hook that is right for you, then look at these two. They look very similar. Both are metal ones, but I can't use the grey one. It doesn't work for me. The silver one works perfectly. It's great. Unfortunately, I can't recommend where you can buy it because it's an old hook. I prefer these with most of what I do, but they don't make these anymore. The hooks matter though and are very important for this project. My suggestions for yarn could be good sock yarn. A lot of them have the same yardage that we require here. I like these a lot, and more of them comes in a lot of shades like Metropolis. If you pick 3 or 5 different colors, you can fade the yarn. There are a lot of more wool yarn and wool blends out there. The reason why I suggest wool yarn is that it's very stretchy, and this helps you when you need to insert your hook into a stitch, or if your stitches aren't perfectly even. If you prefer to use a cotton yarn or a cotton blend, then I actually used Foll for my scarf. It's a bit more difficult to insert the hook into the stitches because this is not flexible, not at all. But it's very soft, and it does help even out the stitches. So if you use a cotton blend, find something that is very soft. Here is a very small sample, and that's just to tell you what to avoid. This is our Tribes, which is a lovely yarn for the project, but this color is very dark, and there are a lot of different colors here and there, and it makes it difficult to see the stitches. Also make sure that you find a yarn that has some kind of smooth surface. This one is fine, because hairy yarn will also make it difficult to see the stitches. If you figure out that you can work with a 5 or 6 millimeter hook, then you will need, for a large scarf, you will need around 250 gram, maybe 300, not with all the yarns, but with some of them. And that's 5, maybe 6 regular yarn balls. If you prefer to work with a whirl, then you should add a matching roulette. This way you're sure that you will not run out of yarn, and you will also have some yarn for practicing the stitches. If you would rather just make a smaller scarf, then 4 of these yarn balls should be enough. Let us start with a sample, and we will start with a row of chains, and I use a no knot method. I have another YouTube video about that, but you can do whatever you're used to. Just make sure you have an even amount of stitches on your chain row, and let the hook decide the size. You can see it's the neck of the hook that decide the size of my stitch, and I don't pull it. I don't pull the stitch that I just made after I pulled the hook out of it. So that's actually the difficult part throughout this pattern. And I'm using a heavier yarn and a big hook here, so it's easier for you to see what I'm actually doing. I think you can make the scarf with an 8 millimeter hook and a heavier yarn than what I suggest for the sock yarn, but it's also going to be, you also need a different amount of yarn for it, so you need to calculate that yourself. When you have a long row of chains, then join it so it makes a ring. I'm inserting my hook into the first stitch, and then I'm doing a slip stitch like this. Now turn your work over so you can see the back bump here. There's the back bumps, and these are the ones that we're going to use for the scarf, so we will practice already and hook into those. And we will do a single crochet stitch here. So I'm inserting, doing a yarn over, pulling out through one loop. I'm letting the hook decide the size of my stitch, doing another yarn over and pulling through 2 loops. Now we have a single crochet stitch. The next one we will skip, but we will make a chain instead. Now we will make another single crochet stitch in the next bump. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And this will be the pattern throughout. I'll make a chain, skip 1 bump, insert into the next one. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through both. This is what we are going to do all the way around. Now I came all the way and my work looks pretty sloppy, and that's perfectly alright at this point. If I thought I might have missed a stitch, I would just add the chain, the last chain here, no matter what. And then I will continue on the next round, and that's for doing waistcoat stitches. And for this stitch I will hook in between the legs of the previous stitch here. And you can see there's 2 strings that comes out of the hole, and these are the legs of the previous stitch. There is also a bar in the background, and I need to hook in before that one. I can use my head, but I actually prefer to use my lip or nose of the hook. It's up to you what works better for you. I'm simply just doing what looks like a simple crochet stitch. I just hook in differently. Next I'm making a chain. Now I need to make another waistcoat stitch, and I need to localize the legs here of this stitch. In this case there's also another bar here at the back, but that belongs to the chain from the previous row, so please ignore this one. Make sure that you hook in between the legs of the current stitch here, and that you avoid this stitch in the background. Push it aside if it helps you. Oops. Like that. Once more, a chain and a waistcoat stitch. Keep doing this, and when you reach the end of the round, continue with the next one and make 6 or 10 rounds. Then you will slowly see that the stitch pattern you're working on makes more and more sense, and it won't look so sloppy anymore. Here's my sample, and as you can see, the yarn takes up the space pretty well. The waistcoat stitches here prevent the single crochet stitches to get close and be knotty. So this is kind of the the secret of the drape of this stitch pattern. If your sample gets dense, then you need a bigger hook or looser stitches. I'm pretty happy with this. If I were to use this yarn, I would also use this hook. But to show you this sample here, of course I used a heavier yarn and a heavier hook. So this is just a sample for you. If you can't make this work, if you think it's difficult to use your hook, try another hook, maybe try another yarn. It should not be a struggle, it needs to be something that's easy to do. Take your time and practice the waistcoat stitch. It might take some time to feel comfortable with it. Next time we will work on the scarf. So you should bring a sample made with the right yarn and the right hook. We will also need measurement tape and some stitch markers or paper clips. That was a lot of information. You might want to view it again. On my blog you can also find notes about this introduction. If you need help, I'm here. I have created a Facebook group for this KAL that is called StoneGnome Crochet. Here you can meet other people working on the KAL and you can share your experience. I will help you in there as well. The next episode of this KAL is published on Valentine's Day 2020. There we will do the first part of the actual scarf. I hope to see you again. You can subscribe below to follow me here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.